After making a viewer scenario for the Second World War and then the First World War for the past month, you got to decide the outcome of the Russian Civil War. As I said in the previous two videos, I got the idea from Emperor Tiger Star and Possible History, but unlike the other two, this topic is more unique. Turnout was 17 people, which more than in the previous two scenarios, and now without further ado, let's begin. Firstly, we have to concern ourselves with Russia proper. Regarding the question, who should be in charge of Russia, you could choose between a red Russia, a white Russia, a green Russia, or a division between a red and white Russia. With 65%, you chose for the white movement to emerge victorious. Regarding the question of its type of government it should have, you were divided between a democracy and a monarchy. I'll go here with a compromise, making Russia a semi-constitutional monarchy with the Tsar holding executive power, but the Duma holding legislative power. While those questions don't matter anymore, regarding a red Russia, Leon Trotsky emerged as favorite, just narrowly beating Nikolai Bukharin, while green Russia would have been led by Viktor Chernov. Then south in the Don-Volga region, you chose by almost 50% for the Don host to be independent, and with the same margin for Kuban to be independent as well. With a 2/3 majority, Kalmykia became independent as Europe's only Buddhist country, and Volga Germany just narrowly with 53%. However, with a 70% majority, you voted for them not to unite. Next up are the Urals. Mariel Udmurtia, Chuvasha Mordovia, Tatarstan and Bashkortostan all became independent with 50 to 70%, with Tatarstan having the highest percentage with 69% and Mordovia the lowest with 53%. Regarding the question whether they should unite, you also voted in favor of that, creating the Idel Ural. Further north, Komi, Nenetsia, Yamalya and Ostiak-Vogel all became independent with 60 to 70%, with Ostiak-Vogel the lowest at 60% and Komi the highest at 69%. Lastly, with exactly 50%, you voted for the four of them to unite into one state. Next up is Siberia and the Far East. You were divided 50-50 for Tamuria, and so going by the alternate route, they too become independent. Regarding Sakha, they too become independent, just narrowly beating out Russian reconquest. Regarding Chukotka, you decided with a 47.1% plurality that it becomes part of the Far Eastern Republic. The Far Eastern Republic itself would become a Japanese client, just narrowly beating out reintegration into Russia. From there, Japan obviously also gains Transamur, and Japan directly annexes North Sakhalin, with North Sakhalin being a 3/4 supermajority. Regarding Buryatia, a close vote between Russian reintegration, Mongolian annexation and independence broke out, but the Mongolians emerged as the victors by one vote. Tanatuva would also become a part of Mongolia, but with a more decisive vote. The same would happen again for Altai, with a similar albeit smaller margin. Regarding Mongolia, you want with 50% for an independent Khanate under the Bogdi Khan to emerge. Next up is Inner Mongolia, where you voted by a whopping 82.4% landslide that it should become a part of Mongolia, which is one of the biggest landslides in the entire scenario. Ultimately, this created this comically large Mongolia that surely would make Genghis Khan proud, but one that has many non-Mongolians in it. The last question was whether the independent states of Siberia should unite, and with 52.9% you voted for that not to happen. Regarding Central Asia, something I was afraid of occurring happened, namely the Basmachi movement succeeding. The issue here is that it had aspirations on the entirety of Central Asia, and so in order to work this out, I'll only give them the areas that become independent by a smaller margin or less than 64.7%. The first area was Transcaspia, or modern-day Turkmenistan, where all four options got more than 20%, but by 29.4% it goes to the Khanate of Khiva. Their 82.4% voted for it to be independent, and since that is a larger percentage than 64.7%, they remain separate. With that same margin, Bukhara also becomes independent. However, both Turkestan and Alash only become independent by 58.8%, and so the Basmachi movement gets both of these, giving them most of Central Asia. Our next stop brings us to the Caucasus. In the Northern Caucasus, the mountainous Republic of the Northern Caucasus would be established. Regarding Ossetia, you voted for it to unite. However, you were absolutely opposed to Abkhaz independence with 62.5%. Sochi would be given to Georgia with 64.7%, while Georgia would remain independent with a three-quarters majority. Regarding the Turkish-Georgian border, a tie somehow opened up between maximal Turkish gains and pre-World War I borders, and given that the territory potentially going to Georgia is bigger than the one potentially going to Turkey and is thus further away from reality, Georgia gets these extra territories as well. Azerbaijan would also be granted independence with 64.7% and Armenia with 70.6%. Zaqatala and the Kura River Valley, which went to Azerbaijan in our own timeline, go to Georgia thanks to a 35.3% plurality. Regarding Lori, you were divided between Armenia and Georgia, and since Armenia got it in our own timeline, it goes to Georgia here. Ultimately, bearing the loss of South Ossetia, Georgia got a pretty good deal here. Regarding Karabakh, a competitive race opened up, but Azerbaijan emerged victorious. Zanju also goes to Azerbaijan, but a tie opened up in Nakhchivan between Armenia and Azerbaijan, and so I have to give it to Armenia. Looking at this, I just want to stab my eyes out. Regarding Armenia's border with Turkey, another tie opened up between maximal Turkish gains and Wilsonian Armenia, and similar to Georgia, since Armenia's borders are further away from the current borders, a giant Armenia is formed. This finishes off the Caucasus, and we move on to Eastern Europe. With 52.9% you voted for Finland to get Karelia. With that same margin you voted for the Kola Peninsula to be given to Finland, and with a 2/3 majority for Finland to get Rapala and Porjärvi, while Petsmo goes to Finland with 70.6%. Another close vote appeared in Ingria, between Russia keeping it, modest expansion of Finland, and Finno-Estonian occupation with Russian rule just barely beating out both. Finland also wouldn't be able to keep Åland, as the island goes to Sweden. This is probably not shocking, but the Whites win the Finnish Civil War with 88.2%, and Finland just narrowly becomes a democracy. This isn't important anymore, but if the Reds have won, they would have joined a Red Russia, which doesn't exist anyways. You narrowly voted for the United Baltic Duchy to endure, but with greater margins for Estonia and Latvia to be independent. Unlike in Central Asia, I aim to strike a compromise where the United Baltic Duchy gets Riga, but the rest go to Estonia and Latvia, with Latvia having to search for a different capital, maybe Liepāja. With 47.1%, you voted for Belarus to get its claimed territories from Russia reaching as far east as Smolensk. But in the south a tie opened up over Brest and Moisar, and since Belarus got it in OTL, here Ukraine gets it. With 52.9%, you also decided for Litval to exist, under the condition that Belarus and Lithuania share a border. Regarding the form of government for Ukraine, the Ukrainian state under Pavlo Skoropadsky would come out on top with 46.2%. A tie opened up between the two most extreme Ukraines, and so I have to go with the more extreme one, giving them the entire Russian south, but this again clashes with the second topic, where Don Kuban and Kalmykia became independent. Kalmykia only is a part of Ukraine in the red line, and so Kalmyk independent outweighs Ukrainian ambitions and it retains its independence. Don is a part of Ukraine in the red and red-orange line, and combined they give us 50%, which outweighs the Don's 47.1%. Kuban is a part of Ukraine in the red, red-orange, orange and orange-yellow line, and these total up to 56.3%, which beats the 47.1% from the Kuban. Regarding Crimea, they get independent with Taurida with a fairly close vote. With 53%, Ukraine gets all of Transnistria, and with 69% Romania gets Bessarabia. Last, but not least, Central Europe. Regarding the borders of Lithuania, the borders of the short-lived kingdom endure, and since it borders Belarus, we get a massive Litval. This isn't important anymore, but if Poland had gotten Lithuania, the Commonwealth would have been restored. Regarding Germany, you chose for them to lose absolutely nothing to Poland and Lithuania, and it wasn't even close, with Lithuania Minor being the only somewhat close one. Regarding Austrian Silesia, you just gave it all to Poland instead of splitting it with Czechoslovakia or giving it to Czechoslovakia. A tie opened up in Moravia, in Spiš, and so it goes to Slovakia. You also decided that either Poland or Ukraine gets Carpathia Ruthenia with 53%. Regarding East Galicia, a compromise was decided upon in which Poland gets Lwów and Ukraine the rest. With 50% Romania gets Bukovina, and with over 70% Ukraine gets Chelm, giving us these borders. The Polish-Soviet War doesn't just end with Poland taking Kresy, but with the liberation of all of Eastern Europe, the problem being that all of Eastern Europe was also independent and Soviet Russia doesn't exist. Thus, instead of a co-equal federation, we can imagine an economic and military alliance between these states. With that, all map changes have been covered, and like always, next time we'll cover the political ramifications. If you liked the episode, leave a like, and don't forget to subscribe. Goodbye.